Coming to you from the Forge of Freedom studio in the heart of America. A podcast dedicated to preserving freedom and inspiring personal success. Freedom is born and lives through you, the individual, and it dies in the shadows of tyranny. Motivating our listeners to become well-rounded, freedom-minded people with the body of an athlete, the mind of a stoic, and the spirit of a warrior. The tree of liberty lives on through you, the Forge of Freedom. And now here's your host, Alex Ooley.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Forge of Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Alex Ooley, and this is episode 34 of the Forge of Freedom. Today, I'm joined by a few special guests here. I've got to my left, to your, it's actually your left because it's mirrored on the video as well. So to my left and your left is Whitney, my wife, our good friend, Allie, and my sister-in-law, Ashley. And today we're going to talk about a little trip that they took recently to Tennessee to the second annual Homestead Festival. But it was your first time going. So we're going to get their perspective as first-time attendees at the Homestead Festival. And I think you're going to enjoy their perspective and what they learned, and maybe get a few tips and pointers about what you might do if you're planning to go next year or sometime in the future. So we're going to get into quite a bit today. I haven't talked to them ahead of time, so I don't know what they're going to say or what they're going to talk about, but we'll see. So first of all, I guess I'd like to say, I'll start with you, Whitney, since you're kind of I think you were the one who kind of spearheaded this operation,
leader, yeah.
Right? So first of all, how did you find out about the festival? Do you remember?
So I think I was just scrolling Instagram, and probably because I follow so many homesteaders, it popped up as an ad, and it was like the drone shot, and it seemed really cool and looked really cool. So I looked into it and kind of got some information that way on it.
Well, and obviously Allie and Ashley went with you. Did you have to bribe them to go, or did they go willingly, or how did that work out?
So initially the plan was our other good friend, Adrian, who lives in Tennessee, she went with us. And unfortunately she's unable to be here. But she went with us. The plan was she and I were going to go, and we were so excited about it. Well, I then told Allie and Ashley about it, and I'm not even sure if I invited you all.
We were coming.
It was just like, we're coming too. It was like, okay. Of course, they were welcome to come, but I'm not even sure if that question was asked. It was just they were going to come too.
So this was a bit of a ladies' trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was probably enjoyable for that reason, if for no other reason. What did you expect? And Allie, I'll go to you here. When you decided to go, what did you expect of the festival? Did you expect to learn much, or was it just a fun trip for you? What kind of expectations did you have?
I honestly didn't expect a whole lot. I didn't know a whole lot about it, but I did bring a notebook, so I was prepared to take notes. And there's a lot. And I honestly I didn't expect it to be as information based.
It exceeded your expectations.
Mm-hmm. A whole lot.
So what did you do to prepare for the trip? And I'll go back to you, Whitney, and then Ashley, I'll let you fill in after her.
Okay.
Well, I mean, really, I think all of us, we knew some of the speakers who were speaking, and YouTube and Instagram, we had seen some of them in that fashion before. And so really we came with open minds and a notebook and made sure we dressed appropriately because it was 90 plus degrees outside.
Now you didn't stay at the festival, right? But can people stay there?
Yeah, so they do have RV spots available. And I think I looked today for next year, they're about $200 a spot. But we stayed with our friend Adrian.
Okay. So you go, and it's put on by Rory Feek, who's a musician, right? And his family on their family farm. And they have, what do they have there? They have music, they have workshops, they have seminars. Can you tell me a little bit about what they have there? Ashley, if you want to chime in.
So they have speakers basically every couple hours. They'll have 4 to 5 different speakers that you can choose to go and see depending on what topic you want to learn about. They have different demonstrations, like we learned about propagating lavender, and we learned how to process chickens. We learned, I went to one that was like shoeing horses, and then at the end of the day, they have music, different groups that play music, and throughout the day they have different food trucks that you can go to. They also have, if you bring your kids, I think if they're 6 or under, or 5, 6 or under, you don't have to pay for them, but above that, I don't know, you'd have to look online, but then I think there's a price. But they have different things for kids, like they had a big like corn pit. They had different stations for the kids to play. They had a gardening center for the kids. So they had a lot. I mean, they just like tons of stuff to do. And then of course all the vendors that you can go through and shop. So just like, it was awesome. So
it's definitely a kid-friendly event. Don't let kids deter you from going, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think for your listeners, something that I can correlate it to is the NRA convention somewhat, but it's outside. They have seminars through the day. The difference is they have usually country music at night, but they have seminars, they have vendors. Everybody, like when I went to the NRA convention, everyone is so kind, and it's just nice to be at a place where everyone has kind of the same thinking and mentality and are all ready to learn. So that's what it reminded me of when I was there.
And some of my listeners may not know, but the NRA convention is an annual convention for the NRA, and it's all over the place, but they typically have 70 to 80,000 attendees in a weekend. And this event's not that big, but they had, 5,000 or 6,000 a day? Is that?
I think they said 6 to 7.
6 to 7,000. So it's a pretty large event for a second annual event, right? So before you went, did you plan ahead about what workshops or seminars you wanted to see, any of you?
So the cool thing too is that they had an app for your phone, and they had on the website what seminars were going to take place and when. So, and even on the app, you could favorite certain ones that you might have been interested in. So we kind of went through and did that just so we had an idea. And they said that they would send us the videos of the whole thing. If you bought a ticket, they'll send you all the videos. But kind of each of us, initially, we all went to a different one so that we could each take notes on whichever one or ones that we had interest in and come back and brainstorm.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, like she said, they would send videos. So out of the 4 or 5 different sessions you could go to, like the first one, I chose to go to beekeeping. Whitney chose to go to like plant, like herbal medicine. Yeah. But if I didn't get to see the one that she went to, I could go back online, and they said online there would be the videos that would be shared. So you can see all of them. So you're not missing out on something.
So this is, I neglected to say this at the beginning, but this is at the Hardison Mill. Is it the Homestead, or what are they? Is it farm, or I don't know. It's in Columbia, Tennessee, right?
Right. It's in Columbia, Tennessee. I believe the official title of it is Hardison Mill Homestead, but it's the Homestead Festival.
Yeah. So it's the Homestead Festival at Hardison Mill, and there's a website that I'll link to in the show notes that's got all the information about the festival, and I think it's got quite a bit of information about the event next year already too. So you get there, and how did you decide what seminars and workshops to go to? Was it like a divide and conquer? You go to one, or did you go to some together? How did that work?
We pretty much just went to the ones that we wanted to. Like, I felt kind of torn because I was like, Allie went to one that was about preserving food for the first one. I went to one about beekeeping, and it was kind of like, well, I was torn because I felt like I needed to go to the one about preserving food, but I really wanted to go to the one about beekeeping. So, but then we found out that the videos would be shared. So it didn't really matter as much about which one you chose to go to. I just went to the one I was more interested in.
Yeah, I think initially, because really we didn't find out until the next day, I think, that the videos would be available online. So it was a little bit of a divide and conquer at first. And then when we heard that, we were like, well, if we all want to go to this one, because I think by the end we had all sat in the same one at least twice.
Yeah.
So, Allie, I'll come back to you. What was one of your favorite seminars, or I don't know what they're called exactly. Are they called workshops or?
Yeah,
Sessions.
seminars.
Did you have a favorite session or one that you thought, man, that really surprised me and
There was
learned more than I thought?
two that I favored: the raising resilient kids and the A Simple Life in a Chaotic World, which was a speaker. He was Amish. That was very interesting to hear his perspective and beliefs of the crazy world we live in now.
Yeah. So what was the resilient kid? Who was the lecturer? For that one?
Jill Winger.
Oh, okay. The Prairie Homestead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What was that one? What were some of your takeaways from that lecture or session?
Basically trying to learn how to just sit back and not hover over your children, that they're more capable than we think they are, and that they can do a lot more than what they lead on. And it's just crazy to see what you want for your children, and that you basically don't have to do anything. You just let them do what they want and they'll figure it out.
And you have two young boys, and so does Ashley. Are you planning to take them next year, you think, or do you have plans?
Maybe when they can walk on their own.
Yeah.
Without needing to be held or in a stroller.
Yeah. Well, it was especially hot this year.
Yes,
too,
it
right?
was a little hot for them, but
yeah,
someday I would like to take them. That would be really fun.
Yeah, cool. Whitney, what about you? Did you have a favorite session?
I mean, honestly, all the ones that I went to were wonderful. I can't say a bad thing about it, but probably my favorite one was a talk by Rory Feek, who's the man who's kind of in charge of the whole thing. He gave a talk about having a purposeful and meaningful life. And so some of the talks obviously have a more generalized approach like that, but some of them are very specific, like beekeeping or herbal medicine, where they're discussing very certain topics and skills. But his was just about how we live in this, chaotic world, and that's just we've made this world into something that maybe some of us wish we could step back from, and how we do that, and what homesteading means to him, and just his takeaway and how he presented that, and pretty much that homesteading and living this type of way doesn't mean that you're going to live a longer life, but it will definitely be more fulfilling and a better life.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, myself included, I think I was in this camp. Like, why? It seems like homesteading and growing your own food and beekeeping, that just adds complexity to your life, but it really helps you kind of reconnect to the world and like sort of appreciate where your food comes from and where we come from. And I don't know, I think, did you get that sense by going to this festival that like, man, this is kind of rejuvenating in some way? Did you feel that?
We were actually just talking about that before we got on here, about how we all had an interest in this, and we all, I could say, homestead in a way. But after going to this festival, it's just like kind of sparked a passion in us to just really keep charging forward through it.
Yeah, and I think too, like, we just felt so weird. Like, we were like, people just don't think like us, or, and one, it was great to be around like-minded people who were there for the same reason, but also like Whitney and Allie, they shared photos on social media, and then it was like all of these people that we know just started like flooding the comments like, oh my gosh, where is that? I'd love to go and do that. So it's like, more people are interested and want that like type of community than we actually even know. And I think part of that kind of goes along with like, just a few years ago, like we had COVID, and now I think people do kind of feel, I guess, a sense of urgency, and maybe not like fear, but more so to like, grow your own food. And maybe it's not because they're afraid or they do feel a sense of urgency, but like for me, I feel like, Whitney has kind of helped me on my trying to like have healthier eating. And when I go in the grocery store and I get, a can of a jar of tomato,
like spaghetti
sauce. Thank you. And I'm like, oh my
And
gosh,
we're the weird ones looking at the labels.
it's like this stuff is just full of sugar or whatever. And it's like, I could make this myself and I could save money doing it. So and back to kind of where I was going with that was like, they talked a lot about like knowing your why. Like if you want to homestead or farm or whatever, you have to have a why, not just because like, oh, I feel like I have to do this. Like you have to have a reason and a purpose for doing it, or it's going to get too hard and you're not going to keep doing it, because it is hard work. And like you said, it seems like it's adding more for you to do, but it kind of gives you like a purpose. And so, yeah.
It's fulfilling in a way.
Yes.
And also, I think secondarily serves as a form of security because,
Yes.
like you said, a lot of people during COVID felt insecure about whether or not there was going to be food at the grocery store. So even though you may not be self-sufficient as a homesteader, it at least provides some backup source of food and nourishment. But it also gives you a sense of fulfillment too, it's not just something you do because you have to, right?
And I think kind of along those points, when you start to question where your food comes from, especially in the last few years, especially in the United States, some of your viewers are from other countries and they probably have similar experiences with the whole COVID thing. Once you start questioning where your food comes from, it makes you start to question other things, with your government and education and
Your
healthcare. You just start going down the line and really start to get your curiosity piqued and really start to dig in of what is the best thing for me and then also my community.
You probably know more about this than I do, but there's sort of this movement or category of people who have an interest in food as medicine, right? That so many of the health problems we have today are because we eat terrible food. So if you start to eat the sorts of foods that you would have on a homestead, or that that you would typically get around the outside of the grocery store, the meat and vegetables, that is the best medicine a lot of times. And I think, I don't know, I'm interested to see what you all think about this, but when you're at the Homestead Festival, that probably inspires you to live a healthier lifestyle too in some way.
I think it comes like full circle, like hand in hand. I think, healthy eating and homesteading go like hand in hand, because you're raising your own food, whether it's you're planting a garden or you're raising your own meat chickens or cows or whatever. It's, that's healthy eating.
So. So you all are all relatively young. What was the demographic like there?
Relatively,
Were
thank
you
We should take that.
were they older, younger? What was the crowd like?
Much older base group. It was a much older base group. I think it was getting towards your kind of 50s. I don't know what's like really old.
But you didn't feel out of place?
No, it was just a welcoming environment. It didn't feel judged for being, I guess, younger considered, but it was just, I don't know.
Yeah. And it seemed like we were the younger ones there, and we actually had discussed that it seemed like it was almost just like a half a generation to a full generation older than us. And, realistically, it's probably because homesteading, depending on how far into it you get, is not a cheap way to, it's expensive to start, depending on how in depth you want to get.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think, though, on the other side of that coin, I think a lot of people underestimate how much they can do in a small space too, because a lot of the impediment is people think they need a bunch of land, but that's not really true, right? I mean, there's all kinds of raised bed gardens you can do, or you can do herbs and lavender and things like that in pretty small spaces a lot of times. Did they have a lot of workshops or things associated with, I don't know, doing homesteading in a smaller space, or were there things that you could take away even if you don't have a bunch of land?
Actually, one or two concerning those topics.
Yeah.
And I think that's true, that people think that, and I think homesteading, I mean, we all could probably agree on the definition of it's being self-sufficient, but that all looks different for every individual person. I mean, I think the three of us and Adrian all might consider ourselves trying to be homesteaders or wanting that, but it all looks different for all of us at this season in our life. So even if you don't have land, or, Ashley has chickens and we don't, but, it all looks different for each person.
And when you say self-sufficient, it doesn't mean necessarily like one family has to produce everything that they need, right? I mean, networking and community is a huge part of it too, right?
Definitely.
And so, you may do something different than Allie and Ashley, and you can sort of complement each other in the things that you do. And
yeah, and I think that's one of the great things too, is that, I feel like we all have strengths in the, quote unquote homesteading thread. And if I had questions about something, or if they wanted advice, we can lean on each other for that too.
And I think that's one of actually the amazing things about homesteading, is that I think it builds stronger communities than communities where everybody goes to the grocery store. Nobody knows where their food comes from. They're not reliant on their neighbor for meat or vegetables or milk or whatever. But by homesteading, you develop that community that is sort of builds with each other, and lends to the strengths of each person in that community. So, did you experience? Was there a lot of networking going on at the festival? Did you notice that at all? A little bit.
Yeah, there was.
I mean, it was in Tennessee, so like.
Right.
Were there a lot of locals there, or were there a lot of out-of-towners there? What was your perception about that?
I think there was a good mix in between locals and out-of-towners.
Yeah.
I guess you could say. One speaker I went to, though, talked about bartering and trading between your community, and she said the big part is basically having to let people know you can't do it all. Mm-hmm. And that's the big part to get over. But that makes you stronger as a community, I think.
Yeah.
To let everyone know that you have to have each other.
Yeah. And to Ashley's point, if you do try to do it all, you're probably going to quit.
Yeah.
You're going to get burnt out and quit
yeah.
at some point. So, but one of the benefits, I think, and I didn't go this year, but I'm planning to go next year, is that you're not bartering with people in Tennessee necessarily. I mean, you're going to go down there and you may buy some things, but it's mostly just about exchanging ideas and gaining inspiration from each other and other people that are wanting to build the same kind of world and same kind of lifestyle as you. You want to say a little bit about that, or agree, disagree?
Well, I'll agree with
Okay.
you. Yeah, I think for me, I think the things I'm interested in, as far as like herbal medicine and functional medicine, and obviously, I want to get into gardening, and maybe hopefully one day we'll have chickens, but I got to listen to a functional medicine doctor for 2 sessions and just really be inspired by him and what he's doing. And he has a direct patient care office, maybe like 20 minutes from Columbia, Tennessee. So I got to speak with him and kind of network with him, and and he's just like, oh, just shoot me an email and we can start talking back and forth. And
by direct patient care, you mean they're cutting out the insurance
Yes.
company, right?
Yes.
So it's just a transaction,
Mhm.
just like you would for
exactly
just
for
about any other
anything,
service.
Any other service, yeah.
Now, some of the seminars or sessions were just lectures, right?
Mhm.
But they also had some hands-on or demonstrations and stuff like that too, right? Did you do any hands-on things while you were there? Any of you? Or any demonstrations that you liked in particular?
It's not so much hands-on, but demonstration.
Okay.
Yeah.
What demonstrations? Were there any demonstrations that you liked in particular?
I mean, I talked about a little bit at the beginning that we watched them propagate lavender. I think the best one I saw was the processing chickens, because I had no idea. And they went step by step what you do, like what you do the day before you even start processing chickens. And like, that's something I really want to do. So it was really interesting for me to go and see that one.
And if I can interject, Joel Salatin, who is kind of a celebrity in the homesteading world, he was the one performing the demonstration. So he had some colorful commentary for us as well.
It was wonderful.
So it was educational and entertaining.
Yes.
It was.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I just thought it was awesome because he, at the end, so they went through and they did probably like 5 to 10 chickens at first. And I mean, they were doing a bunch. And then after they got through the first kind of round, and went step by step through everything, then they just kind of let people continue to watch them process chickens. And they even let the kids who were there come up and do it. I think they said like they were going to let any kids like up to age 13, 14 come and do it. And I just thought that was awesome because I don't know, that's just not a common practice in today's society, that we just, involve our kids in things like that. But
yeah, that's cool. So, and I suspect that your boys and Allie, your boys would all participate if they had the opportunity.
Yeah.
So are you planning to go next year, each of you? Yeah.
We are.
Are there any things that you missed this year that you definitely make sure you saw or did next year?
It's hard to know because
they may have different
stuff. They may have different seminars and demonstrations and whatnot. I mean, I think that we all kind of agreed we were just so tired from traveling. We didn't stick around and listen to the music, which I think we would enjoy. And then also, some of the seminars, I think it was just so hard to choose which one I wanted to go to. I was like, man, I wish I could have went to that one. And one of them went and was like, it was so wonderful. We learned so much. But then I learned so much. So it was just very difficult to make a decision on which one you should go to. But yeah. So, I mean, if they had a talk similar to one that I went to last year, I would probably do a different one next year.
I'll go down the line here, starting with Ashley. Is there anything in particular that you were inspired to do by the festival that, like, man, I'm going to go home and I'm going to start doing this?
Oh, all the things. Yeah. Yeah, I mean a lot. I went home, I propagated my own lavender already. At least attempted to, but I think like Allie said, the probably one of my biggest things that like I was like, I really need to start implementing that into our own household was the talk that we went to about raising resilient kids and just simple things that you can do with your own kids that to make them old fashioned and resilient and just not doing really doing nothing.
Well, how much of that, obviously I wasn't there for the session, but how much of it was about just letting kids take risk and like allow, because they are smarter than we give them credit for, and allowing them to take risks helps them identify their limits and also their abilities. Was it that, or
Yes.
was there more?
It was that. I mean, part of it was that. And like
yeah.
just letting them problem solve on their own. Like Jill Winger, she talked about how her kids went and got themselves stuck in their cattle trailer and it didn't open from the inside. So they were stuck in there. And then the next day, well, she can't find them again. They're in there again. But this time they took tools so that they could problem solve on how to get out. And it's like, man, I just want, like that's what I want for my kids. I want them to problem solve on their own. And that's how you're going to learn critical thinking, not by using a pencil and paper all day, in my opinion. So
yeah, so much of the current model for education, right, is sit a kid down and stuff them full of information. Mm-hmm. And so much of it they need to figure out by exploring through adventure and through, testing their limits and taking risks, right? So that's neat. Allie, what about you? Anything that you were inspired to do?
I was just going to add.
Oh, sure.
She made a point to say, let them be bored, because that's when they start to get curious and create creativity, is because they have nothing else to do. Yeah. So just let them be bored. Let them just do what they want, kind of, or to an extent. But
I know when I was bored, I have, as you all know, an older brother, but we're pretty close in age. When we were bored, we went outside
dangerous
and did all kinds of crazy things. But that was when we were most. That's when we were most creative. And
your mom's only now finding out about it.
And we swore secrecy until we were adults. And my mom is just now figuring out some of the stories. But yeah, I think that's a great point, because that's when we were most creative, was when we were bored.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I feel like if you decide to be a homesteader or you decide to garden or whatever, not only do my kids like help me do it sometimes they're just like picking worms out of the dirt or whatever, but like gardening kind of gives me my like own thing and my own time. And while I'm gardening, they're like overdoing something, and it's like that kind of goes hand in hand as well, because they have to be bored. They have to go figure out what they want to do on their own while I do my own thing.
Allie, anything that inspired you at the festival that made you say, hey, I want to go home and do this?
While I was there, I bought a little bit of flour, and I like to bake. So as soon as I got home on Sunday, well, we got home that Saturday night, but on Sunday after church, I went home and made rolls and cookies, and I was just so excited to use this. It's they locally mill their own grain, and it was just a wonderful experience to be able to cook with that. Yeah. And feel it. I don't know, it's just a different feeling.
Yeah, a lot of the flour I think that you get, I'm not a baker, I'm not a professional baker, but it's sourced from farms that get wheat that's genetically modified, that's grown on ground that's not very fertile, and
it's
all sorts of
bleached.
things. It's bleached. Yeah, there are all sorts of differences, and I think probably people are surprised when it's like, why would there be any difference between what you got and what you buy at the grocery store? But there's a huge difference in just little things like that.
And it's considered, I think it's considered gluten-free because it doesn't have all the it's not processed. It has all the nutrients that it's supposed to have. It's not pre-sifted, as they say on the bag, like most of them do. So it was just delicious.
What did Jared think, your husband?
He ate quite a bit of rolls and quite a bit of cookies.
So he didn't have to say anything.
No. Yeah, honestly, on the bag, it has a website and we've searched to try to buy more, but you have to buy wholesale. So you have to buy like 1,200 pounds of flour in order to qualify for. So I don't know if I'm going to get that far.
I'll have to be making plenty of rolls.
a lot of cooking.
Yeah. Whitney, what about you? Anything that inspired you?
I think it has inspired me for the future, but also gave me hope that, even right now in our season of life, that even if I don't consider myself actually a homesteader, I mean, just, going to the grocery store and looking at the labels and trying to pick out the best meat and whatnot for us right now at the grocery store is still trying to be self-sufficient. And, I think doing those questions and asking those questions as I'm going along. But I mean, even, just like I said, in our season of life, doing the small things, of even just planting our own herbs and, getting eggs from Ashley. Because there is a huge difference in quality of eggs just from her chickens versus the ones that you buy at the store, and just trying to make better decisions that way, but also learn and grow for the future. So I'm ready when the big season comes in homesteading for us.
Yeah. Well, I know, and this is going back to a point that Ashley made earlier. I think part of it's inspiring too, right? Because you don't feel like you're alone, right? There are other people, like-minded people out there,
for sure,
and that find this sort of lifestyle worthwhile and fulfilling. And I think homesteading, whether that's gardening or raising animals or sourcing good flour from wheat or whatever it is, there's lots of different variations of it. I think it helps you reconnect to the world. And even though it is busy, it is work, it is hard work, it gives you a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment, right? Would you all agree with that?
Yeah, for sure.
So what kind of, you mentioned that there were some vendors there. What kind of vendors did they have?
Oh.
Allie, you got this.
I spent quite a bit of money, all my cash in the first day.
So the car was not that full when you left, and
it was
when you came.
Who took all our money?
It somehow disappeared. But they had, I mean, I hate to say like this, just t-shirt businesses. Like they had a bunch of those, which I bought some, and I went and they had their website on there, and it was nice to see that it's not just t-shirts, but they like represent other things than just the t-shirts. But then there was, flower booths, different seeds, and then how to have healthier soil was a couple of them. And then
they had soaps and
knife booths,
and a lot of
Adrian's family had a booth there.
Yeah,
right?
They did, and I think they did really well. So
they got my money.
I think they got all of our money.
They got your all's money.
Yeah. I bought wool dryer balls, which I made Alex say, "Fill the ones that we bought from the store. These are so much better." But they were. I mean, they just had everything you could think of. I mean, I think when we walked in, we were like, is this heaven on earth? Because it feels like, because it just had everything that you could think of that you would need homesteading as a vendor there.
Well, are you planning to invite your husbands next year?
We bought the ticket, so they should be coming.
Is that by their choice or your choice, or is it mutual?
Both.
Yeah. Have they said? Are they excited to go?
I think so.
Yeah.
To learn.
Yeah.
Might not be excited about the big group of people, but
did you annoy them when you got home?
Oh, 100%.
Talking there, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I stopped talking about it since we got back. So
Caleb knows all about it.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
Whether he wanted to or not.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's about where we will wrap it up. We were hoping that Adrienne would get to join us, but she couldn't make it to join us this evening. But I'm sure she gained a lot and learned a lot.
I would say she would probably agree with us that she very much enjoyed it and learned a lot. We have a text group now, and she told us that she had listened to like 7 or 8, and it was Tuesday, and she'd said she'd already listened to 7 or 8 Roots and Refuge podcasts and taken notes.
Is Roots and Refuge, is that somebody that was there?
Her name's Jess Sowards, and she's also kind of a celebrity in the homestead game, and she was there and gave a talk as well.
Cool. Well, is there anything else that you think people thinking about going need to know, or that you would like to tell people if if they're thinking about going?
I mean, maybe not necessarily if they're thinking about going, because I think everybody should go, obviously. But just like in the homesteading world, Jess Sowers, who Whitney just mentioned from Roots and Refuge, I thought about this when we were talking earlier about people think you have to have a big farm or whatever, a lot of land, but she always says, make your waiting room your classroom. So if you're waiting to get a big plot of land or whatever, well, make that your classroom. Like, grow your herbs in your pots on your patio or whatever. And I mean, I think that's just like a big takeaway that I had, was just like, you don't have to do it all. Just kind of like do what you can, and you're going to learn. If you just I had never started seeds before, and I did that this year, and I learned a lot. So
you don't need any space to do that, hardly.
Yeah, exactly. So just start with what you can, and you're going to learn, and you're going to see what you like and don't like. So,
Allie, any parting thoughts, either about homesteading or for people who are thinking about going?
Definitely, if you are able to go, definitely go. Even, I mean, it's worth it. I don't know how else to say it. It's to be around people that think the same as you and it was a very faith-based lectures that had went on, and several of them, and it was just very, like I said, inspiring to hear everyone talk about how their faith played into a lot of their journeys in their homesteading, which was very interesting to know that they're all the same.
Yeah. Whitney, any parting thoughts?
I guess I would just agree that, I mean, even if you do not, quote unquote, have a homestead, but you're interested in it, or are doing something small in your home now, or would like to learn more, I would 100% encourage you to go, because you won't regret it. I think all of us can agree that we feel more motivated than ever after attending that, and have annoyed all of our husbands enough talking about it, just because it was just so inspiring. I mean, just seeing, and I mean too, just seeing the people who have taught us, in a sense. I mean, you know, like Jess and Joel, like, they're kind of a part of our lives, and then you get to see them and kind of interact with them. And and pretty much them tell you you're doing a good job, keep going, you can do it, was just very encouraging. So I would encourage all your listeners, if they have the means and have the time, that they should go.
Cool. Well, thanks, ladies, for joining the show. I'm excited to go next year. So it was good to hear your thoughts about it. I've talked to you individually a little bit about it, but talking to all of you together has been fun. So thanks for coming along.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So to end the show, I'm actually just going to share a little excerpt from the Homestead Festival website, because I thought it was really, really pretty good. It's not terribly long, but I'm just going to read it here. And this is at hardisonmill.com. So like I said, I'll link to that in the show notes. But it says, the world has never been so connected via the internet, yet somehow we are more disconnected from each other than ever before. As our lives become more complicated, something inside us longs to simplify, to get back to the land and get our hands in the dirt, to get our hearts in what really matters in life. This has been true for a while, but even more so in the last few years, with a spike in fear, anxiety, and depression of epic proportions around the world. There has never been a time in recent history where homesteading skills have been more needed and relevant than right now. In the last few years, we've all seen empty grocery store shelves, and all across the country, people worried. What does our future look like? So my wife, Joey, and this is Rory speaking, and I started putting down new roots, building a more sustainable life, and living on a farm, turning our house into a home. From the simple act of putting seeds in the soil, our homestead has become a thriving source of life and love for my family and many of our friends. Blessed to have the house we live in and the life we live, but longing for a home that means more. Not more things, but more of the good stuff. The things that money can't buy. So with that, thanks again for joining the show. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did, and share the show. Help us spread the message of freedom. Until the next episode, remember, you are the Forge of Freedom.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Forge of Freedom. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. For more information or to connect with Alex, you can go to forgeoffreedom.com or follow him on Twitter at Forge of Freedom. Until next time, remember, you are the Forge of Freedom.